All right, welcome. Thanks for being here. I hope everyone is enjoying day 2 of Horizon Summit. Please continue to engage with us on social media using the hashtag Horizon Summit. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your attendance here at this panel session. This is New World, Redefining the Fan Experience, powered by Samsung. I'm Dan Kaufman, Sport Techies Managing Director, and I have a great group here that I'm thrilled to chat with about this subject of fan experience, fan engagement. This is part of the fan engagement and marketing track that Samsung is supporting. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you to the audience for joining. I'm going to give our panelists about 30 seconds to a minute just to give a quick intro about who they are and what they do. And I will start with Ronnie Bryant. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ronnie Bryant, Chief Information Officer for the Hornets Sports and Entertainment and Spectrum Center. I handle all technical operations and not technical operations, but all IT operations and telecommunications for the team in the arena.
Thanks, Ronnie. Kirk.
Yeah.
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Kirk Kessler. I'm a sales manager with the display division for Samsung Electronics America, and specifically I work in what we refer to as LEEs, so live events, entertainment, and spectaculars. And I've got the privilege of working on primarily professional sports venues and D1 sports venues.
Last but not least, Mike.
Good morning. I'm Michael Rowe. I'm the CEO of Anthony James Partners, and AJP is an AV consultant and an owner's rep. Happy to be here today.
Great. Thanks, guys. So when we were talking about this and prepping for this panel ahead of time, I think we kind of divided it into 2 sections, and that's in light of the obvious, which is the COVID pandemic that everyone is going through right now and that we're hopeful to come out of sooner rather than later, as long as everything's safe. So we divided into kind of, our short-term challenges, and we do want to address those as they relate to COVID. But what we're going to talk more about is kind of the long-term vision, what we see and what these guys here see when it comes to a long-term vision of fan experience, fan engagement, once we all are able to go back in full force to sports and entertainment venues. But let's start with the short-term challenges. And I'm going to address this question, and I think I'll probably pass it to Ronnie first, and then I want other folks to chime in. But the question is, how do you think, or what do you think that the in-venue fan experience will look like during the short term, particularly during a time of uncertainty where we have, no fans, which, the fan experience at a venue is going to be nothing then. But what do we think it might look like when we have limited fans, and how are you approaching that within your organization, Ron?
So for us, I think the challenge is creating an environment where the fans feel safe, they feel welcome, and they feel as if, they can come and go and get the same or somewhat similar to what they had before. And I think the challenge is getting people in and making them feel comfortable, with the setup you have, and making them feel as if your building is safe and you took all the necessary safety precautions. That is required by the CDC, as well as the government for when they're coming to your building. So I think those are some of the things we're looking at. Temperature scanning and cashless and mobile app, and having an environment where they can feel as if they can move and freely move as they want, and they have enough space around them to 6 or 8 feet, whatever the requirement is at that time, and feel comfortable, and as well as get the entertainment value out of attending an event, a game or a concert.
Yeah. And Mike, one thing that we talked about specifically was, maybe a concept of how you might be able to simulate a full stadium when there isn't a full stadium, whether it's through audio boosts or simulating, the actual appearance of fans. Tell me a little about what you're thinking when you're talking to customers.
Yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of interest, and it's a short-term kind of a gap situation. But it's a reversal. Instead of trying to look at the entertainment value for the fans in the building, we've been asked in a lot of these circumstances to try and figure out how to make the building appear right on camera, or to appear right, to still have the energy within the building. So we've been looking at, maybe a little bit less about the spacing of people in the building, and more about potentially placement of smaller displays, and mixing in active video with backlights, and reinforcing with two-way camera and audio boosts to try and get a little bit more energy, not just for, some of the leagues are interested in, and the teams are interested in even creating that energy for the players, because they're feeding off what the fans are doing. And right now, even if they go in with a limited number of fans, which is, up in the air, they're struggling. So we've looked at a couple of different designs this way. And, I think it's really going to fall to what happens over the next, 30, 60 days. I think we'll start to see the league starting to enter and say that we want to try something and see if it's going to work. But even if it does, I think it's a stopgap.
Kirk, anything to add to that from Samsung's perspective when it comes to video displays?
No, I think we're seeing a lot of venues trying to determine how they're going to utilize their video displays and breaking up information, with the assumption that maybe fans are spread out more in a venue than they would traditionally. So there's definitely been discussions about how we're breaking up video displays into segments and windows, so to speak, and also the type of information that's being shared that wasn't traditionally, a few months ago, but not a whole lot different right there on the usage of displays until we get in. And I know, Dan, you're going to jump into, what are different technologies that might be implemented. And I think a lot of it's going to be more informational early on when people enter venues than traditional marketing, right? So I think we're all used to that, but I think most of the visual displays are going to be more informational early on as we learn about what this is going to be like.
Yep. Well said. I was having a conversation with a couple of folks in Europe from the Bundesliga and from Sky Sports, the broadcaster for the Bundesliga. And they mentioned that one thing they were very conscious of was, although we can deliver the fan experience without fans in the stands, we don't ever want to make the fans feel like they're not a critical part of the stadium experience. Ronnie, and anyone, but I'll start with Ronnie, thoughts on that comment. Tell us how important that is for you.
I mean, that is huge. I mean, in sports especially, and even at a concert or family show, without fans, you can't really host it's not really hosting an event. So, I mean, I think the players feed off the energy of the fans, of course, just the entertainment value, but the fans are very important. And even during this pandemic, which, no one anticipated or expected, what we've done is to continue to engage our fans, as we've kind of used some of the collaboration tools like Zoom and Teams to keep interacting with our fans, giving them opportunity to chat with our players, coaching staff, and executives, about how they're addressing this, how they're dealing with it, and honestly giving them opportunity to chat with them and ask them questions that, typically they're not able to ask, so it's giving us an opportunity to use some of these use technology and tools to allow fans to get honestly closer with our players.
Mm. Ronnie, I'm curious what you think. There's one concept where the fans watching the game without fans in the stands is a little bit odd, right? But then there's also the concept of the athletes actually trying to perform without fans around, which is also odd. And I assume that you probably have some interaction with the athletes given your role. What are you hearing from them, if anything? And where do you see which one of those is more odd is kind of the question for me. I almost think that, like, as an athlete, you can kind of focus past that, but I'm not a professional athlete. So,
yeah, I mean, I hadn't had many conversations with it because that is, I don't think we're in the business of having events just for nobody to only watch them on TV. That's what's fun in that. Yeah. But I think, I think it'll be definitely an odd situation to be in a 20,000 seat arena and only, 50 people are there, or maybe 100. And I think we'll use partners like Michael and his team to try to create some type of AI situation where when you're watching at home, it looks like a 2K game where the building is sold out, as well as doing things where you can pump crowd noise or something, like try to make it somewhat as close as reality as or as a full stadium as you can. But I mean I think that's with however it seems, if we're not able to go back back to the way it was, which at the rate it's going, we probably won't. We'd probably look at technology where we can kind of simulate that same environment.
Yep. Well, let's think about that. That's the short term. Let's think about the long term, though, because I think we all do expect and hope that at some point we will all be back in a full stadium and enjoying an in-venue fan experience. So let's jump to that. And I want to start by asking you guys each to give me your definition of what fan experience, fan engagement is to you, because I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but your perspectives are important. So Mike, why don't we start with you? Fan experience, fan engagement, what does it mean?
Well, it kind of depends on which business you're coming from, I guess, how you view it. I mean, in my case, I'm technology bound, so I'm trying to figure out how the fan is going to be engaged by the technology, essentially from the time that they get out of their car, to the time that they get ready to leave the venue. I think a couple of things are going to go on, post-COVID, but I think, one thing that happened, in the 2007, 2008 period, after we had a recession and we had a disruption, was new buildings slowed down, renovations increased, and people started to get a lot more budget conscious. So I think it's a really good time for people to start kind of analyzing, when you talk about the fan experience, what are they trying to achieve? And I think that word gets very confusing for a lot of groups. And certainly from a technology perspective, I think it's a good time to start thinking intelligently about how you're laying out your technology, why you're choosing specific technology. And I think it gets to be it's a cleanup period, I guess. Everybody kind of shakes their head and really starts focusing in on what is truly a fan enhancement. For me, for the fan to get everything he wants is when he's sitting in Ronnie's building and he looks around, it's an immersive experience. He's enjoying a live event, but he's also being entertained, not overwhelmed by everything visually. He's not being blasted out from an audio perspective. He's got to get off his couch, so he needs to have a reason to go to that event. And it's the energy, right? He doesn't want ads pounding him at every door, but he wants to be told a story. He wants to be able to find his way easily. He wants to be able to get to the concessions. He wants to be able to see the event. But he wants it to be a good experience throughout. And I think that takes some planning. And I think what's gone on in the past is now everybody's throwing so much technology at things that it becomes confusing to the fans. So I think it's going to be a time where people start to, there's so many things you can do right now. Maybe it's time to kind of slow down and choose the best things and the most effective. And, the catchphrases, the biggest and the most advanced, maybe you start looking at, what's the most valuable and what's the most impactful. And I think that's a healthy way of looking at it.
I like the way you said that, and I want to get back to that in a minute. And maybe this actually is a good segue to kind of move away from that question, although I might get back to it for Kirk and Ronnie as we go along. But Mike, tell us, when you're working with Ronnie or you're working with Kirk, tell us a little bit about one thing that you said, which I really like, and that's that, what is too much technology, right? Like, if the fan experience is disrupted by technology to a point where it's not enjoyable, then you're failing, right? So how do you go about working with a client and determining and answering that question about, one, what is the ROI that I'm going to get from this if I'm investing in technology? And two, not just dollars and cents ROI, but, fan happiness, which does happen to maybe in turn affect your ROI. But how do you evaluate those decisions when you're talking about technology that you might have to have in place for years?
Well, I tend to compartmentalize everything as we go through it. So for us, it's, working with Ronnie was really easy, quite frankly, because, it was a complete renovation in that building. It was audio, it was video displays, it was broadcast facilities, it was infrastructure cabling, IPTV. I mean, everything in that building was essentially upgraded. So it was basically laying everything out and saying, here's your options. And the options range from, the biggest, most colossal technology in each of those to, entry level. And you kind of go through and you work your budgets. I mean, it's important to understand what you're buying. And, before you go out to bid, before you go out looking for the technology, I believe that what's in Ronnie's building right now and what they wanted was fully decided on before the bid ever went out. The only decision that was made in going out for bid was the choice to go with Samsung, which was an excellent choice. And, they did a great job in putting in the equipment. But all of the decisions were made in advance because they understood the costs. They understood the infrastructure. They understood everything involved in it. The personnel, the warranties, the service, the maintenance, what was the purpose of those elements? I mean, Ronnie's got a backdrop of the center hung behind him, but the truth of the matter is when you're sitting in that building, it's not, it's got a great personality, but it's not overwhelming. It's not a big, massive brick in the middle of the building. So you can see around you and you've got corner boards and you've got ribbons that attract your attention, but there's not so many things blinking and jumping at you all the time that you're just visually overwhelmed. And I think, same with concourses and that, you can put in 20 great displays and 20 great pieces of signage in a concourse that tell a story, get your ad revenue, and they'll be 1,000 times more effective than hundreds of TVs spread everywhere, overwhelming you. And I think, it's a matter of sitting down, going through every piece and planning it out. But like I said, I mean, for guys like working with Ronnie, it was super easy. They have an excellent team. They knew what they wanted. And it was just a matter of choosing from options. And I think we were able to help provide options.
Kirk, what would you add to that? Specifically from your perspective, when you're brought in by someone like Mike and Ronnie, and your goal is obviously display. Tell me about your thought process in deciding how much display you want, where you want it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think, we're fortunate enough, the three of us that you're speaking with today, that, we get to see things that are several years out into the future from what the public will ultimately see. And we get to make a lot of decisions about that. But I'll tell you, internally at Samsung, we kind of joke about when we're talking about displays is that we're kind of one of our own worst enemies because we make such great product for the home. So how we, what's the incentive for people to come into the venue? And I think, to add on to Mike's point about displays these days, because I think in all pro sports venues, so to speak, there's always a venue that's got the biggest or whatever that is physically, right? So adding on to Mike, now we're starting to do stuff where we're going to make the engagement more sophisticated, right? And that's what we're going to do, making it more personalized. I think right now we're looking at technologies that allow fans to engage their favorite players, right? People are more involved in statistics than they were a decade ago. So you cater to that market, and also allow, we're looking at technologies that allow fans to actually curate their own experience. So whether that's sending messages to their favorite players as in the tunnels, things like that. So that's where we see, I think Mike mentioned that there's going to be a refinement kind of going on for a period of time. I think that's what we really are seeing going forward is there's a lot of different pieces of technologies that exist right now, whether it's tracking who's going to the concession stands, what the lines are like, but it's really tying that all together with kind of a a custom operating system for each venue. And I think that's really what's going to change the whole engagement and change the experience for people. Because there's a point where displays, there's enough of them. It's how we're utilizing those and the information that we're using in each venue.
Well said. Ronnie, what would you add to that? I mean, and I think I'll ask you this specific question. When is too much, right? Like there's a balance, right? Some people just want to come and they want to watch the game. Other people and a good chunk of people want to be able to engage with something on their smartphone while they are watching the game. How do you approach that, Ronnie, right now?
I'm of the mindset is never too much, and that's because you got to cater to so many different appetites. And so you may have some that, like you said, I mean, like what we're doing, we have mobile app, we have cashless, we have, we might help us get more digital displays in our building to give the fans several different options. Kirk hit on a major point as well. I mean, everybody has a larger appetite for analytics and stats now. So we realized and found ourselves having to present more of that. And everybody wants, everybody loves the center home because, you can't get a 80,000 pound TV inside of your home. So it's good to come to a facility and have that. So, I mean, everybody loves that. So I'm of the mindset that it's never too much. It's about opportunities and providing different options so that whatever your appetite is, depending on you, we're able to provide that need and you're happy. I mean, now on the technical side, it's definitely a challenge to manage. Instead of managing one or two different products, you're managing 20 or 30. But it's good to have partners, that can present you multiple options to choose from, and then strategically work with your tight budgets to make it all work.
Fair enough. Kirk, when we were prepping for this panel, you had mentioned a specific tech that has a different use now that we're in this COVID phase, and that we may continue to use in a different way even once we are able to go back to venues in full force. And I think that's an interesting thing to talk about, and I've enjoyed talking about it with other folks as well. But like, what are we taking from this experience where we have had to make so many changes and we have had to think so creatively? What are we taking from that, not only to solve the problem now, but one that we're going to keep, and it's going to solve a different problem that we didn't even expect it to solve going forward? The specific one that you mentioned was kind of line movement throughout the stadium. Go ahead, Kirk.
Yeah, so what's interesting, Samsung, since we've all been involved in this since March or slightly before that, right, we're looking for solutions, right? So there's an expectation that, we're going to be monitoring temperatures possibly, right? I don't know, it's a moving target. We all are experiencing that right now, but there was a piece of technology that was originally developed just to really help a fan understand what the wait times might be at concession or at the restrooms. Well, where that's kind of morphed into now is utilizing sensors and scanners and being able to find out, are people maintaining proper social distancing because they're following them? So that wait type solution is, we don't want them congregating in a particular area, so let's use the digital signage to direct them to another part of the facility. And I think moving forward, we can see that change, as you mentioned, Dan, that now we're going to utilize that to find out where particular fans are going. Do they have a favorite area of the venue that they're visiting that might be different from where their seats are? So that technology is in place, but I think it comes back to that original concept of, we're going to start refining a lot of technologies that are existing standalone right now and kind of put them into a group to help a venue understand their fans better, the fans get more out of the event, and also, right now in the immediate future is provide a level of protection for the fans and the public.
Well said. Mike, anything to add to that? What kind of technologies do you see put to different uses, or do you see being incredibly important once we do go back to having full stadiums?
Well, it's interesting. I think Kirk hit it with the word flexibility. That's really not just about the applications that can be reused, but right now these facilities, they're looking for how to operate in non-traditional events and traditional events. And, you know, philosophically, I mean, we think it's not a bad idea to be second through the door sometimes. The first guy to test the new technology and the first guy to test all the new things, doesn't always work out so well. He probably pays twice as much and gets half as good as it'll be the second and third iteration. But, you take a center hung, for instance. I mean, we're looking at different ideas now where a center hung is essentially 4 sides and it's independently controlled, because they're looking at maybe using it not just for the sporting events that it's traditionally understood for, but they're so big now and they're so heavy and overwhelming. Now they're looking at maybe double siding them and bringing them down in individual components so that you could use it for multiple events. The idea is to use the technology in flexible ways. I think it's smart to use existing technology that they understand and you have confidence in, and they're reusing it in smart ways. So I think what Kirk's talking about is, one of the challenges with the COVID situation is much of the investment that you make right now, goes up into the ether the minute that they have a solution for this and people feel comfortable without all of the social distancing. So any investment you make in this, you really need to be able to look at it, not just for today, but what it could amount to in the future. So I think all of the technology, all of the things that we would consider are looked at in the same way.
That's well said. We've got a few more minutes here. Time has flown by, but I want to give you guys a chance to answer this last question, and I think it'll be a good way to close the session. And the concept is, in thinking about fan experience and fan engagement, once restrictions are lifted and, the government, the community, and medical community has all told us it's safe to go back to a full stadium environment, how do we, as sports professionals, all three of you, how do you take further steps to convince fans that they should come back, right? It's not so much you can come back, but that you should come back. And, not just considering like, oh, we've put in all the best safety measures, but, fan engagement measures, fan experience measures. How is it going to be better than it ever was before? Who wants to tackle that one first?
Oh, I'll go first.
There we go, Ronnie. I was hoping it was you.
So yeah, I think one way we tackle it is we present to the fans, the precautions we're putting in place to make sure they're safe, make sure they're comfortable, offering them products and solutions that make it easy for them to come in and do what they want to do, offering them, cashless registers so that you have the option, if you don't want to interact with anyone, you can, or if you don't want to, use cash, you can not use cash. You can order from your seat. You can use our mobile app where you can, do express pickup, offering them, and also doing things where you can, put replays within the mobile app and giving them options to where they really don't have to, they won't have at home, but also, whether they're on the side of have heavy precautions on being in the building, or if they're on the side where they're comfortable about being around people. They have the tools to do either or. As also on that same note, I mean, I think also we focus on, bringing the entertainment value of, bringing the concerts and family shows that they want to see, as well as NBA games. So I think if we offer those, I mean, I think people will be more interested in coming back to the facility and be more engaged. I know I'm tired of, I've gotten so involved in the cornhole tournaments. I think I can maybe take on Mike Rowe now. But I'm ready to see some live sports.
How do we televise that right there? Mike, Ronnie passed it to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I mean, you're chasing the, you're never going to catch what is the ultimate fan experience. It's an ongoing thing. We're just passengers on the train. I believe that I'm with Ronnie. I mean, I want to see an event. Like I'm jonesing to cheer at a basketball game. I need to see some hockey playoffs. I want to see a concert. Like I think that fans are going to want to come back in, and I think I have to believe that this is going to have a positive end at some point. I think everybody is kind of going a little crazy or stir crazy being stuck inside. But I believe that the fans are going to want to come back. And I think we're going to do our best to try and give them the best technology and the best enhancements anyway. So.
Fair enough. Kirk, the last word.
Yeah, Samsung's always going to be developing new display technologies. It's, we're seeing stuff that's 2 to 4 years in the future. But I think right now we're talking about what are we going to do that makes the experience different when fans step out of their car, like Mike and Ronnie had talked about. What are we going to use with existing technologies, incorporate those to make it seamless, make it easier than maybe it ever was before. I think fans are going to have an expectation that maybe entering a facility is going to be difficult. I think you need to work on kind of calming any of those fears. And I think I'm in agreement with my buddies here that everyone wants to get back in and see that. I had an opportunity to fly a week ago, and it wasn't flying like normal. So I'm ready for everything to be back to normal. I think the fans are going to embrace it very much so. Yeah.
Well, I can skip the flying, but I'll take the rest.
Yeah. But I mean,
Kirk.
it is strange walking through empty airports. So we want full venues. That's for sure.
Great. Kirk, thank you. Mike, thank you. Ronnie, thank you. Thank you to our audience. Please enjoy the rest of Horizon Summit Day 2. Have a great day.
Cheers, guys.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks.